Here's what we know, the podcast of unexpected conversations. And I am looking forward to this conversation because I know it's going to be a bit spicy and sometimes controversial, though I don't know how it's going to be controversial. Mike Gutter has written Never Again still means never again, right? Dismantling hate groups and other music. Mike, I hope it doesn't bother you, but I read this book and I laughed because I enjoyed your anger. And I enjoyed the way you talk to these people who are, I agree with you, complete morons and idiots. If you choose to be a racist, if you choose to be a part of a hate group, you're a moron. And your righteous anger was hilarious, especially as you poke holes in I hate to use the word paragons of racist society. And we'll go down all that and everything. How are you?
Good, man. And by the way, you think that book, this was the book I wrote first. Okay.
Yeah.
This one has, I think it was over 500 cuss words in it. So, that one, you want to talk about anger. Oh my gosh. I wrote it angry. I mean, it was on purpose. Part of my personality, not that my personality is an angry personality, but I will admit when I get, when I'm frustrated or agitated, et cetera, I get mad. It's like when somebody falsely accuses you of something. Nobody can understand how you as the individual, how mad you can get, right? So I wrote the entire book like that because I'm just tired of it, especially today when you can literally fact check something on your phone. And, and so the ignorance, I couldn't take it anymore. I just really got up one day and wrote it.
I enjoyed it. And I'll tell you the truth. Mike asked me before he came on the podcast, he goes, how rough can the language get? And I said, listen, I'm not opposed to rough languages, not as long as we just don't turn it into a monologue and it goes over and over again. But as far as the righteous indignation, as I've said, I loved the anger because really you have to. You have to, if you sit back and think about the reality of of the hoops of some of these people have to go through to convince them how their view is acceptable is mind-boggling.
And to add on a little to that is that, Jews in this country are known for being, very diplomatic, leftist, politically speaking, et cetera. And you just have to ask yourself at this point, and at least I did for myself, I'm like, well, is what we're doing working? No, not even close. All the anti-Semitics were still 4,900 incidents in the last 24 months as I wrote the book. Now, my gosh, forget about it.
And somehow we don't view those as hate crimes. Somehow, I don't know. That's just me. That's just me.
Nor are we minorities, which we don't want to be classified as that. But if you're gonna classify specific groups as minorities. Anyway, I did the niceties that we try to do, that we still try to achieve, the diplomacy, et cetera, is still, and we still have 5,000 anti-Semitic incidents in the last 2 years. It's not working. What we're doing is not working at all. The ADL, the Federation, the amount of money we pour into all these groups, it's not working. Between anti-Semitic behavior and growth of Jews in the U.S. population, declining rapidly, what we're doing is not working. So I wrote a book. I put a lot of facts in there, as I'm sure you saw, and then I would add my opinion to that. So I think, hey, you know what? Let's just maybe try something else while we're also being diplomatic.
And there's no way of not touching on some of these things. The amount of anti-Semitism that is in our universities right now,
disgusting,
is astounding.
Disgusting.
It is. If you would have came to me 20 years ago and said, this is what they're going to be doing on campuses, and I'm talking about campuses in New York, which is known as a pretty big bastion of a Jewish culture there, right? This is what you're going to find in New York. I would have told you, no. And this is somebody who was raised in the Deep South. I'd have been like, no, there's no way that would be out.
Well, first things first, okay. And I'm not saying I'll make a comment, not not really from a Jewish perspective. And I have a YouTube channel that I don't think I've put something on in 6-7 weeks. And I think if you look at some of those, I think you'll laugh your ass off because they are very hardcore. But the job of any administration at any university on the planet, their first job is to protect their students. Period. You have people coming from all over the world to attend universities. All right, and who's going to send their children if they're saying anybody attack Jews, or anybody else?
Or anybody.
That's the number one job of the administration. Forget books, smarts. Their number one job in their head is money. But with that is you have to make sure the kids can be safe. For the lack of protection with the Jewish students, it's so disgusting. I honestly don't even. My comment on my YouTube at the time, after this was starting, my first thing that I said to all my fellow Jews is that you need to immediately get your kid out of that university. Number one, right out of the gate, get them out. They won't learn, and because money is 99.9% of their thought. The only thing that we can do is, or anybody could do, is take their kid out, disenroll them, and let them pick somebody else for the next couple of years until they get their crap together. But it's the with professors, a participation, no security at all. When I hear of Jews in 2024 being cornered in a library room and having to lock the door, I honestly I can't tell you how mad I get. I can't verbalize it. Disgusting. And Jews who are we are very giving, and I can tell you there's a lot of universities that Ivy League or not, that friends have attended, and the donations that they send, either in big gifts or monthly, biannually, by year, whatever it may be, they need to take all that money out and just stop and until those guys clean their mess up at each one of these universities. I wouldn't, not $1 would go to them. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and just to be frank about it, and again, this is my take on it. I think one of the most sharpest people and one of the most sharpest politicians and a rising star is the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, who was passed over for the VP pick because they were afraid of his Jewishness. Now let's be clear, that's what they were afraid of.
Right.
And they were afraid that if we anger people, we might lose Michigan, which they lost Pennsylvania and Michigan. Right.
Israel and Jews have been hand in hand with the United States society for a long, long time. Again, people forget. Again, Israel is the only democratic country in the Middle East. Now, that may not mean somebody who looks at our military and like, wow, that's massive, that's huge, etc. But Israel always has the United States' best interest in mind. Always. I mean, my gosh, some of these guys, we cow down to some of them, which is okay with the amount of influence and money that is sent, not just by the government, but by citizens. Israel and the U.S. are tied, and to have somebody come out, in the numbers they did, in the way that they did, as far as attacking verbally and physically Jews, I don't understand how the country isn't like, what's going on here? This is Israel, I don't know. It's weird to me because of the relationship that Jews and Israelis have had with the U.S. and vice versa for so long, and being backed by so many political people in political power in the United States. The relationship that they've had through the years with Israel too.
I think the country did sit back and show. I mean, the media portrayed it one way, and I think that's one of the things about the election, whether you like it or not. I think we can all agree the media had a vested interest in one side, and when that didn't happen, the thing I take away from it, and what I like about it, is that the American public has shown that they can decide on their own. Now, that's good news for both parties. It's good news for both parties. Right. The fact that we've all become no, that doesn't, just because you said it doesn't mean it's real. Right.
Yeah.
And that bodes well for all of us. And it gives me a lot of hope. My son's 14 and he goes,
Who would have thunk? I mean, even a couple of years ago, but who would have thunk that the country, especially when you look at the statistics of the vote, that the Republicans will be now, without question, the party of the middle class and of Israel.
Yeah, and the gross they made with the minorities is crazy. But as I was saying, my son's 14, and he goes, "I'm so glad I didn't have to vote in this election." And I'm like, "Well, here's the good news. I think in 4 years, this is me. This is me talking. I think we've had the worst candidates we're going to have, and plus, what we've learned from this is that you can't lie to the American people anymore because the American people are going to see through it. So you might as well come out and tell the truth." You might as well come out and do that. And I said, and don't ever get so caught up, because every year, whoever they nominate, the other side's going to turn them into a demon. That's what they're going to do. But you do your research. And I said, as your father, will never tell you how to vote, but I will ask you to educate yourself. And once you educate yourself, you go from there, and then you vote your conscience. And I am filled with optimism in that, because I think America has shown that no, and as we start finding out the seedy sides, and we found out that, these celebrity people who endorsed candidates were getting paid. I think,
Hold on, paid. First off, I agree 100% with everything you said. I tell everybody, if somebody wants my opinion, I'll give it to them. If they feel there's something incorrect in my opinion, look it up. Do your research. Yeah. I mean, it's just not that difficult. I 100% with you too. I never tell anybody how to vote. Never. It just doesn't go anywhere. But it's crazy. Off the top of my head, 52% of men Latino vote. Republicans got, was it 45% of black males?
Yeah.
Something like, I mean, what? I mean, like, that's because it's because the Democrats have been so dumb, and they have been so elitist that they forgot who runs the country. It's always the middle class. The middle class always runs this country. And if you could somehow attach to them and they believe in you, you're winning. Period. They were just. I mean, oh my God! I'm sure you've seen some yourself. Like, you see these montage of political pundits before the election started, going through the evening, then through the night, and it's just like, but they're just, it's not, they're like, damn, we lost. It's complete and utter shock that they lost. They have no idea why. Truly no idea. I don't know. By the way, I didn't. Anderson Cooper made $20 million a year. You get to see all these ancillary things. I'm like, But anyways.
Well, and as I'm saying, hopefully you are, because there are a lot of smart people. You hate to say this because it gets so turned on both sides. There's smart people on both sides. And I hope that they will sit back and go, hey, what can we learn from this? Because failure is the best opportunity to learn. There's sometimes, I play golf. There's sometimes you go out there and you just have a magical day where everything works and you don't know why. You can have fun, but you don't learn anything. Some of the days that I struggle are the days that I learn the most. And it leads to those days that are just magical. But it takes that days of struggling to go, what am I learning from this? And that's what you hope that we all come away from this election. And again, with this, what I love about your book is that you're trying to teach. Yes. And with Hitler, my father fought World War II. Right. So I'm an oops baby. Right. So by the time I've got 4 sisters and a brother, and my oldest sister is 18 years older than me. Right. So they always laugh that, listen, you're a Thanksgiving meal that got out of hand. I mean, that's what you were. But I had heard some of the stories from World War II. So it was not just apocryphal for me. It was somebody who had that experience. And it was, we kind of went through this stage after that. We started building up that Germany was this monolithic superpower with no faults, that they were just perfect from every way. And that's what made them so amazing, and I don't use amazing in a complimentary way, but we were very respectful, if you will, of their power. And what I loved about your book is how you go in and rip away the Band-Aid and show the reality of it. You
Thank you.
show how they got there. You showed exactly what they did. You showed Hitler's petty jealousies. And just, I mean, he didn't like anybody who wasn't, 5'6" with a mustache and black hair.
Yeah.
That was who he was. And they built him into this deity, if you will.
Right.
And some of that deity was based on fear. I get it. I get it. And I do understand that concept that we weren't there. But the bad thing is we found from this this election process over the last 8 years. If you call everybody a Nazi, then nobody's a Nazi. Because the Nazis were really bad. They were really bad.
Yeah, when I started hearing, that when you're calling Trump a Nazi, you're calling his supposed voter base Nazis too. I know what a Nazi is. When you call, it gets thrown around, when somebody wants to really insult somebody. But no, Trump never. I mean, I don't know. It's just it disgusts me, and it was a label that a lot of people in the media used.
Yeah, and listen, if you would have called Biden or Harris a Nazi, I would be just as disgusted by it.
Of course, you should be.
And it's one of those kind of deals that we do let the rhetoric go out without knowing the history. And that's what, I'm not kidding you. I wish I could make this required reading in high schools.
I hear that. Honestly, I hear that a lot.
Because we don't, the kids grow up, they just hear this word and they don't know what it means. They don't know the true implication of what it was. They don't know the society that they were trying to build. They don't know how thievery, I mean, what did $300 billion that they may have stolen? And is that just in art or is that in all things? But that's $300 billion.
Yeah, you'll never win. But just like I don't know this for a fact, but I do a lot of research just for myself, just so I can if I'm in a discussion with somebody and arguing a discussion, I want to make sure I'm right. So so do as much research as you want. For example, I would guess. I think now this is total conjecture, but I think Putin is probably the wealthiest individual in the world. I think with all the oligarch money that he asks for in order to get to be allowed to do X amount of things in the country, I do think, and I'm talking liquid money, I'm talking stock money. So, so I just think he does. Anyways, Hitler had the same thing. Hitler, as you read the book, you'll understand that, it got to a point where they were stealing so much that it was like, what was the true nature of killing Jews? Was it, because of that's what he was a freaking psycho. So, but the amount of money stolen from Jews, the amount of property, the amount of art, he had caverns, caves filled with just art. I mean, I go over the statistics of some of the countries and how much he stole. Yeah, so it was just so I don't remember the number I gave, but it was probably
up to $300 billion. And let's see, those caves that you talk about were literally built by slave laborers, people who would be worked until they died.
Yes,
and that's the thought process you have to bring into it.
Yes.
That nobody, you may be driving for DoorDash, but nobody's going to make you work till you die.
Correct.
Right.
And for nothing, by the way. Yeah. For water and breadcrumbs. Until, because they knew how long they could starve somebody. Okay. For slave labor. And they knew when the next train was coming in. I mean, the whole thing was just, do not compare somebody to a Nazi unless you really bring it. And then I gave some of the Nazi groups, some of the really sick ones in the SS, the Einsatzgruppen, and they just, I don't know. I've said to kill somebody, it probably isn't easy, but you do it if you're for protecting somebody. Torturing somebody, sorry. there's something wrong with you. Who knows how they could torture you? I don't know.
I'm going to ask you to conjecture here, and I'm going to ask you to conjecture because based on your research and because you've delved so much into this, right? And I know we could go look for documentaries, and I can find papers on that, but I just wanted to have the conversation with you.
Sure.
Where do you think Hitler started going weirder than he was? Because in my studies of Hitler, this Austrian guy, failed painter, was disgusted by the loss in World War I. Where do you think it started going so far off the rails with him? Do you think it was from birth? Do you think it was World War I? Do you think something happened in his childhood years? And again, I know it's conjecture.
I'm
it's conjecture.
But
Okay.
Okay, he was always kind of a loner with low personality and low friends growing up. And he, in World War I, he was a true over-the-top psychotic patriot. It would never question any order or anything like that. And he was, there's many accounts of what he actually did, but forgetting what he actually, in his service was itself, he was just to the highest extent when Germany, raised the white flag. So after that, he couldn't get a job. He was a painter. And I put in the book, he was a painter in Vienna and selling paints that he was making on the streets. And he got so mad he couldn't make any money. And I'm like, the same people who do that today don't make any money. And but that's not him. It was always blaming somebody else. He always blamed somebody else. If I can get really specific, what I think is that he started, I think he was working for either the police or something, and he was trying to find rebel rousers, ironically enough, and he started going to the beer hall where eventually the beer hall Putsch came from, but just to stake out people. And he was going to them, and he started liking what he's hearing. And here's what I think happened: as a guy that just literally couldn't buy a friend, he realized soon thereafter, because he started participating, and he was giving speeches, and he realized very quickly that he was good at it. And so as he started growing, way unbeknownst to him, people started coming, because when Germany had at that time had truly no money, no jobs, a loaf of bread was $1 billion or whatever. I mean, so it was his timing came along with the ascension of politics. And so I really think it came from those beer halls. And once he got out of the beer halls, well, the venues just started getting bigger. And I think that was it. I mean, I put in the book, I read Mein Kampf.
Mm-hmm. So I didn't have to.
That was just the worst. If you read Mein Kampf and then know what he did, it's that night and day difference. But if I had to guess when this all started, I would say in those little beer halls in Munich.
At Reed Animal Hospital, they treat your pet as if it was their own. Now, I'm a very satisfied customer. I can tell you they mean that. It's not a chain. It truly is about helping you and your pet enjoy life together. Dr. David Reed and his entire staff take the time to get to know you and your pet. I can tell you what I like. He's helped me better understand what my dog Luna needs and how I can take care of her more efficiently and kindly. Find them online at reedanimalhospital.com. 2 locations, Saratoga and Campbell. Little secret from me to you, Dr. Reed actually gives you his cell number so he can answer your questions and concerns. They really are committed to you and your pet. reedanimalhospital.com.
I'm with Mike and Brenda Council with another real Mike Council plumbing and rooter story. Let's talk about the early days. What was it like?
Well, when we first started, the phone was by the bed.
So just the two of you?
Exactly.
And I would answer the emergency calls in the middle of the night. I'd wake up and answer them.
2:00, I'm headed out the door.
So 30 years ago.
30 years and 6 months.
But I hear Mike Council Plumbing might have had its beginnings when you were, what, a kid?
Yeah, I grew up in a little one-room shack, and we had an outhouse out back.
An outhouse?
That's correct.
Oh, my.
And Ended up with a great appreciation for indoor plumbing.
I guess. And when you finally got it?
It was a great day.
Since 1993, the people of San Jose and the South Bay have trusted Mike Council Plumbing and Rooter for all their plumbing needs. From emergencies like a drain backup or water leak, maybe you need a new water heater or fixture installed, a gas appliance hooked up. Give Mike Council a call at 408-217-1002 or go to mcplumbing.com, an official partner of the San Jose Sharks.
You're in clean hands with Mike Council Plumbing and Rooter.
It's interesting how people in history rise up in power, right? Because I think if you would have went to anybody in the German military, the German government from 1800 all the way to 1925, and asked them if they even knew Adolf Hitler, and if they did know them, did you think anything of him? I can't imagine more than one person might have said, yeah, he's a true believer. And that's about the highest compliment they could have given him.
He's a punk. And I have somewhere in the book, I have him and Goebbels and all those assholes. I have them in there. And I relay specifics of what they did, their accomplishments. And it's a joke. These guys, you would know nobody. You don't know anybody. You don't see anybody. You don't read on anybody that would hang out with those guys. None. They were just, there's no, Goebbels would shut up at any time. He was 5'2". He was what was his, he had some major like ballet. I mean, he was just, or something crazy. I can't remember what it was. But these guys were, you would never, Goering, he was one of those life at the party type guys, maybe, but the other guys, no. You'd know you'd hang out with them. And these guys ended up having, the amount of power and money that they achieved in that short span is truly, it's shocking.
Well, and nobody was more afraid of them than the people in the Nazi party.
Yes, definitely.
Because people, if you were your average German citizen, I don't think you had that much to worry about. Again, this is my take on it. I don't think you had that much to worry about it. But if you were within the party system, man, one wrong thing, maybe you didn't invite so and so to something, or your wife may have inadvertently disrespected their wives or something.
Right.
That could lead to horrific consequences.
Correct. It was the Gestapo. I mean, those guys. And the SS, I mean, these guys were psychotic, and there were no rules. They don't have like a code of conduct. It's whatever the higher guy says at the time to the guy below him, That's whatever that may be. That's the order, and it's just by any means necessary. It was a time that my gosh, I hope, of course, it's never repeated. But Germany I've been to Germany. I spent some time there. And I don't even bring it up. You don't bring it up. They don't talk about it. They know what happened. They admitted what happened, and they can't apologize enough. And to me, you have, for example, you have various definitions of someone who's dumb or ignorant. Okay. Now, for me, the highest, the dumbest, you can't get dumber than, are Holocaust deniers. They have to be the dumbest people on the planet. Flat earthers are getting close, but just kidding. But so when you see who who was denying all this stuff, well, initially it was all people that were in the military. They were denying all was happening. You think they would like to send back to their family how much raping they were doing as they went through Russia? You wonder why Russia, what their response was when they started defending and winning, what they did to the Germans. I mean, I don't, none of it was all uncalled for. But I mean, the German soldiers, my gosh, they were just so brainwashed. Yeah,
that's the thing. If you're a student of history, and as you sit back and say what Germany tried to do to Russia, then what Russia did in retaliation to Germany, and then what Russia did to itself. I mean, 20 million people. Stalin just said, no rhyme, no reason, no charges, no anything. You're just gone to the gulag, and that's where you'll die.
And by the way, one of the worst ways you could possibly die is starvation. Like from the time you stop eating your last bite of whatever until death. I mean, that's just, and how many people starved? Oh my gosh, in Russia, torture. It was torture. And
Well, and yeah, and that's the thing. That's what I was saying. As far as I just wish, I fear, because if you don't study history, you're doomed to repeat it. And I don't know, when I grew up again in that era where World War II was still real. It was still
Sure.
real for
Sure.
everybody. And so we understood the calamity of it. Plus, I don't know how to say this. I mean, Hollywood, that was all of our stuff. I mean, we had war movies and we had, we were the good guys, and there was a thing on that. And is there gray areas and everything? Absolutely. Were we always the good guys? No. And I think anybody in the armed forces would tell you there's times there's bad soldiers. There's people that no. But as far as
they get punished though.
Yeah, but the cause was in my opinion just. And we've gotten away because we try to gray area it all the time, right? So what did you do to the indigenous people? Well, which indigenous people are you talking about? Are you talking about the people that they stole the land from, or the people who that group stole the land from?
Right.
Because that, and it gets into very gray areas, and we can sit back and try to make things right with today's history, but that time has passed. But if you don't sit back and truly look what Nazis were, and truly understand what fascism was,
right,
and what it is, and what you think it is not what it is, and you besmirch the people who died to protect you from it, and the sacrifices that were made, to think that, oh well, if you don't vote the way I think you should, then it's the last vote you'll ever cast.
But what they're doing is you're scaring people, especially younger people. When you throw out the term fascism, as I've heard 1,000 times, it seems like in the last 6 months.
6 weeks.
At 6 weeks, yeah, I mean, it's mind-boggling. But when you throw out fascism and someone goes, "Oh my gosh, you're a fascist," okay, what do you mean by fascist? Like they don't know how to define it, and then they can look, instead of looking up just the word fascism, just type in on Google Italy, fascism, because that's where it started. Okay,
yeah.
So then read what he did. Mussolini. So go ahead and then Mussolini, when they finally captured him, they brought him to the town square. I can't remember the name of the city, and they ended up killing him. I think somewhat slowly. They hung him upside down.
Him and his girlfriend, his mistress.
Him and his girlfriend. They hung him upside down so they could pee on him. That's how bad. That's what fascism leads to.
Mm-hmm. And again, when you throw it out there, I mean, we've had political leaders in this country within the last 2 weeks call the other side fascist.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is so disingenuous. And I would be upset on whatever side said it.
Yes.
And it's like, no, if you want to accuse someone of having communistic tendencies, okay, but are they true communists? No. I mean,
although after yesterday, when Trump appointed Matt Gaetz, they may make it a different response.
Well, it's just like with even Bernie Sanders, who's the most famous socialist in America. He still won an election. That's not the way they do it in true socialism and communist country. So he won an election. So he's not really what you would call a true socialist.
And the civil servant one has 5 names, I think. It's at least 4, but I think it's 5 names. Nothing disgusts me. Just disgusts me more than any. I think I wrote all this stuff down, but I think I go maximum nationally serving in 20 years. Period. I think Congress, which is way worse than whoever voted for president, way worse. I think Congress should be in session maybe 120 days a year, and then have maybe 10 different reps rotate throughout the year. because all they do is spend money. When I heard yesterday that he asked Elon Musk and how do I pronounce the other guy's first name?
Vivek Ramaswamy.
Vivek. Okay. As someone who's going to look at our crazy deficit, I almost had a tear in my eye, because I've been telling everybody for years that the president is irrelevant. When, for example, last year the U.S. brought in 4.4 million and had to borrow another 1.8 trillion. I'm sorry, 4.4 trillion brought in, borrowing another 1.8 trillion. I'm like, that's just out of control, So,
well,
anyways,
it's the lies that we all agreed to. And I'll tell you, you know what a lie we all agreed to is?
Yes.
Let's not think about what happened on the hotel bed before we got there. Right? That's the lie we all buy into. We go to a hotel, and I don't care if it's a 5-star, I don't care if it's a Holiday Inn, but you jump in and you agree to the lie that I'm not going to ask what happened in this room, much less on this bed. Right? You have to agree to it.
Gotcha.
And we all agree to the lie that, okay, well, this public servant who's never made more than $110,000 in their entire career is now worth $400 million. And both sides. Sides.
No, this is definitely both sides.
So, and we're all like, yeah, okay. So we're going to buy into that lie. We're not going to even think about what happened on the hotel bed, and we're not going to even think about how they accrued vast amounts of wealth, way beyond the pale.
Think about this, okay? Who would spend, let's say, $5 million for a $175,000 a year job? That's the House of Representatives, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, and I think I've come to the reason why this is my opinion, because it's a tremendous amount of power, and here's why. Just all you have to do is simple math. Just take 6.4 trillion, divide that by 435, and that's what each member of Congress and House has the ability to spend. It's $12.5 billion per vote.
It is
now take
amazing.
6.4 million in the Senate and divide it by 100. You know how much power that is?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I think, that's the real power that nobody thinks about.
And that's why, what I'm excited, because here's my thing: nothing ever turns out the way you think it will, ever. And so, if you're worried, like I said, if you're a Republican and you're thinking, oh, yay, nothing ever turns out the way you think it will. And if you're a Democrat and you're thinking, oh, nothing ever turns out the way you think it will. Yep. So, what I am hoping, though, I am excited, and I've said this before. I think we are a more literate and suspicious electorate than we were 8 years ago. And that can't be anything but good. No matter how much people want to go, oh, well, I think what really irked a lot of the people is when you're told, if you only understood what we're saying, you would vote that way.
Right.
And this election, and I think a lot of elections were like, no, we get it. We get it. What you don't get is if you only understood what we're saying, and at some point we figured out what you were saying, and now maybe you can figure out what we're saying. And that's why I said I hope so, because I think we will end up getting better candidates. I think from here for the next few election cycles, I think you're going to see better and better candidates. I honestly have that optimism.
Well, I think there's a lot to be said with like sites like yours and others. I think you're going to see, the reason that MSNBC and CNN right now are getting just hammered on viewership is because people. It was very easy for people, especially younger people, to fall in love with a site, let's say, or a TV channel, and later you don't have to do anything because you have people on these various shows who's doing all the thinking for you. And then the election happens, just 6 or 7 days ago, 8 days, whatever it may be, and they get their ass kicked, and then they're like, "Well, how's this possible? You've been telling us this for the last 2, 3, 4 years," and so I think what I hope happens is that now more people understand that there's many more opportunities to be educated on political, social, various things that you can get through open sites. And not to be told, but to listen and learn. And then you pick your candidate. I've always said to people when they vote for president, because, everybody, when these presidents are in debates, they're asked 100 questions and they have 100 answers. Okay. They're not right on all 100, not even close. So for me, pick 3. So my 3 is simply, usually it's Israel, the economy, and security. Although this particular go around, I had to throw in a 4th, immigration. But normally I just say to pick 3, and whatever president aligns with those 3, or congressman or whatever, vote for them. Don't get all intricate like they have all the answers. That's all.
I wish we could do it. And, I don't do a 3-hour podcast, but bless Joe Rogan's heart for doing it. Now, because I could not listen to 3 hours of podcast, much less talk for 3 hours of podcast.
Correct.
Hell no, just no. But what I wish we would turn presidential debates into, with 2 guys sitting in a room with a truly impartial, just an inquisitive person, whether it be Rogan, whether it be me, and in a locked room with no staff and drinks and snacks. And we are not walking out until at least 3 hours have gone by. Because I get the thought process behind Rogan. You can spend an hour just glad handing it, hoo, hoo, hoo.
Right.
Sooner or later, you're going to run out of the prepared marks. And then we're going to get into a conversation.
Sure.
Now we're going to talk about something. And I would love to see debates turn into that. No audience, no staff, just 2. And you know what else that would do? It would get rid of the 80-year-old candidates. It would.
Yeah.
And so we would get younger candidates who had to be more versed in everything and be able to talk about anything. And if I asked you, hey, what about Afghanistan? And or what are we thinking about Venezuela? You would have to have a pretty good idea of what's going on there. I would love to see things change. And we're starting to see it change, right? And plus what that does is it takes AI and deepfakes out. Right. Yeah. So now this is what's happening. This is where it's going on. And you would go into it knowing that I gotta talk for 3 or 4 hours now. I gotta be able, and I gotta handle this opponent for 3 or 4 hours.
Let me go something else out. There would come a point where they were both at some point eventually say, I'm not sure. But you would ask a question to them, and one of them, if both of them won't say, I'm just not sure. Because you never hear that. If you could pull it off, and my vote would be for you to do it, by the way, I'd have you hosting. That would be phenomenal.
Well, you know what else? You know what else it would do? After about 2 hours, no matter how pissed off you were, sooner or later you both realize what you're doing. Because nobody else. This guy, my son played tackle football first time this year, and he loved it. And I said, "Tell me what you loved about it." He goes, "Dad, it's so hard." He goes, "You have to practice 5 days a week. You have a game, plus you're doing all your schoolwork, and nobody knows how hard it is except the other guys on the team. And those are the people who know how hard it is." And at some point, when you're into it, 3 hours into it, you're going to look across it and go, "Hey, man, ain't this hard? I know it's hard. Nobody knows it like you and me. Nobody knows it like we know what we're going through." And you would start to find common ground. Both of you would. And it wouldn't matter what your race was, what your sex was, what your sexuality, it wouldn't matter. You would start because only you 2 people are the ones who truly understand what the hell's going on.
The pressure.
Mm-hmm. I would find that fascinating. Yeah. And I think we would get a lot more open and honest answers.
And one debate like that, or discussion, or everyone tell. That's all you need.
Everything you would need to hear is there, and you wouldn't need to hear it anymore. And there would be no stump speech. You'd just come out and you'd go, "Hey, let's just talk. That's what we're going to do."
Right.
And
after 2 hours, in that environment, they're going to be, they're going to be speaking what they know of. After they get out the BS of, all the answers that everybody wants to hear, eventually, they're going to have to answer questions that they're not sure of, or they're going to answer it like from the heart, like real answering. So,
well, and also they'd have to get back to what, as you said, you have your 3 or 4 things that are really important, right?
Right.
they'd have to basically boil it down to that too. Like, listen, we're going to address all the issues, but here's the big thing for me. This is the big thing I'm after. And what you would find out is you might find out that both of you are trying to get there. The same thing. You just have different ways of doing it. And I think that would dissipate a lot of the hate. I think that would get rid of a lot of the anger, because then you could say, when you saw your opponents literally relate to each other as a human, that gives you the tacit approval to relate to somebody you don't agree with as a human too.
You're absolutely right.
And that's the fear, because you said earlier, how do you torture someone? How do you kill hundreds of thousands, millions of people? You turn them into something that is not human. That's the secret. If you can turn them into something that's less than human, now here we go.
Yeah, that's what it took. And unfortunately, we realize now as a society that we can get to that level.
Yeah, that's the hard thing. That is, man, that's, like I said, I so encourage you to read this book. And the first book, Never Say Never, means never again, or never say never still means never again, because it's filled with anger. It's filled with disdain. It's filled with indignation, and it is filled with hilarity. Because I would just love to watch the person's face who needs to hear it. I'll share this story with you. I grew up in the Deep South, right? And I had a couple of uncles who were extremely racist. It's one of the reasons I don't live in Alabama. It's not as bad as it was, but one of the reasons I did. But I went home for a family reunion years ago. I had not been home forever. And one of my cousins, a double first cousin. If you wonder how you get a double first cousin, well, your father and two of his brothers marries your mother and two of her sisters. That's how you get double first cousin. And my cousin walked up, and he was carrying this little girl, and she was Black. She was African American. And I said, "Hey, who's this?" And he goes, "This is my granddaughter." And his father was the biggest racist in the entire world. And inside, I just smiled, and I thought, screw you, Uncle John. Screw you so much. Screw you so much.
Yeah.
So,
that's funny.
I was all about that. Michael, I have so enjoyed this conversation with you.
A pleasure.
And you know, we'll get together again and talk about some more election ideas. We've figured out a lot of problems here today. We've come up with some solutions.
They never call on us. Come on, we have all the answers. We're right here, but they don't call on us.
You know, they did not know. We finally got around to talking about this, and people now know our ideas, and there'll probably be a groundswell of support.
Absolutely, there's no question. But yeah, anytime you want me on, just let me know.
I will.
I really appreciate this. You're very good at this. I appreciate it.